The maximum Canada pension plan, benefit at age 65 in 2026, is $1,507.65 a month. But the average new recipient gets only $816 a month. That gap, nearly $700 a month, matters a lot when you're building a retirement income plan. And here's the mistake I see over and over again. People hear delay to 70 and get 42% more and assume that's the right move for everyone. It's not. For a large number of Canadians, delaying CPP could actually leave you with less total income over your lifetime, not more. If you have less than $100,000 in savings, the standard delay advice may not work in your favor. And if you're married, there's a second trap that almost nobody talks about, one that could leave your spouse with nothing if something happens to you before you start collecting. Those are the two variables that change everything: your savings level and your marital status. The advice you've probably heard ignores both of them. In this video, I'm going to walk you through both traps, show you the numbers behind each one, and give you a simple framework to figure out the right CPP start age for your specific situation. The math might surprise you. If you're a Canadian near retirement and you want to avoid costly mistakes like this, hit subscribe. I put out new retirement planning videos every week. But first, let's look at why the standard advice works for some people and why it completely falls apart for others. The maximum CPP at 65 in 2026 is $1,507.65 per month. The average new recipient gets $816. That's a gap of nearly $700 a month, and it exists because most Canadians don't have 39 years of maximum contributions behind them. They took time off, worked part-time, or had years of lower earnings. So the maximum is really just the ceiling. Most people are somewhere in between. Now, the timing rules are simple enough. If you start CPP before 65, your benefit is reduced by 0.6% for every month you collect early. Start at 60, and you're looking at a 36% reduction for life. If you delay past 65, your benefit grows by 0.7% per month. Wait until 70, and you get 42% more than the age 65 amount for life. That's where the standard advice comes from. And mathematically, it makes sense. If you take CPP at 65 and compare it to taking it at 70, you need to live to roughly age 82 to come out ahead by waiting. That's the break-even point. But that break-even calculation has a built-in assumption, a big one. It treats your CPP as if it exists in a silo, completely separate from everything else. No savings, no RRSP, no spouse. Just how long do you need to live for the bigger check to win? For someone with a large RRSP, say $400,000 or more, that silo calculation can actually make sense. You delay CPP, draw down the RRSP in the early years, and the tax math often works in your favor. You're spreading your income across different sources in a way that manages your tax bracket. But for the majority of Canadians, the ones with modest savings, the silo breaks down fast. If you have $100,000 in your RRSP and you delay CPP to 70, you have to live on that $100,000 for 5 years while you wait. You're not smoothing your income. You're draining your only financial cushion, and when the bigger CPP finally kicks in, you have nothing left to fall back on. If you're nodding along because that sounds like your situation, modest savings, maybe $100,000 or less, you're not broken. The advice was just designed for someone else. It was built for people with bigger portfolios, and it got applied to everyone. So the real question isn't, should I delay to 70? The real question is, what does my specific situation actually call for? And to answer that, you need to understand what happens when the silo breaks, starting with a single case that shows it clearly. Let me show you what this looks like with a real example. Meet Susan. She's 62, single, lives in Ontario, and has $100,000 in her RRSP, no company pension. Her CPP estimate at 65 is $900 a month, slightly above average because she had a decent career but took some time off to raise her kids. Susan has two paths in front of her. Path A, she takes CPP at 65. She gets $900 a month from CPP, and she draws modestly from her RSP, about $4,000 a year at a 4% withdrawal rate. Her total annual income from age 65 onward comes to roughly $14,800 a year. Not a lot, but she still has her RRSP as a cushion. She can tap it for a car repair, a dental bill, or a week somewhere warm. Path B, she delays CPP to 70. To bridge those 5 years, she needs to live on something. With no pension and $100,000 in savings, she draws $20,000 a year from her RRSP. By the time she hits 70, her savings are essentially gone. At 70, her CPP kicks in at $1,278 a month. That's the 42% bump from delaying. Her annual income is now about $15,336. That's $536 more per year than Path A. On the surface, Path B looks like a win. But look at what she gave up to get there. She drained her entire RRSP by 70. There's nothing left for unexpected costs. No buffer, no flexibility. If her furnace breaks at 72, she has no savings to draw on. She's entirely dependent on her CPP and OAS. And here's the deeper problem. If Susan doesn't make it to 82, the break-even age, Path B never pays off. If she lives to, say, 78, Path A gave her about $192,400 total. Path B gave her $100,000 in bridge withdrawals plus 8 years of the higher CPP, which is roughly $223,000, but with nothing left in the tank by the end. The margin is thin, and the resilience is gone. I used to think delaying was almost always the right move. Then I ran the numbers for a client in almost exactly Susan's situation. She had $95,000 saved, no pension, and had been told by someone she trusted that waiting until 70 would set her up better. Once we worked through the actual cash flows, it was clear that wasn't true for her. That conversation changed how I think about this advice. The delay to 70 mantra is genuinely smart for people with big portfolios. For the majority of Canadians who have more modest savings, it's not the slam dunk it's made out to be. The higher monthly amount looks great on paper, but it comes at the cost of burning through your savings during the bridge years and leaving yourself with no cushion afterward. Delaying gives you a higher guaranteed floor. Taking at 65 gives you a lower floor, but with savings still intact. Depending on your situation, that flexibility can be worth more than the extra income. Now, Susan is single, but if you're married, there's an even bigger trap, one that can leave your spouse with nothing if the timing goes wrong. Let me show you that one. Now let's talk about married couples, and this is the part that catches most people completely off guard. Meet John and Mary, both 62. John had a high-income career. He's on track for close to the maximum CPP at 65. Mary worked part-time for years and will get about $600 a month when she turns 65. A financial advisor tells them to delay John's CPP to 70 to maximize their combined lifetime income. The math, in isolation, checks out. But here's what that calculation misses. When a CPP contributor dies after they've started collecting their pension, the surviving spouse receives 60% of the deceased's benefit for life. That's the survivor benefit. So if John is collecting $1,507.65 a month and he dies, Mary would receive $904.59 a month from his CPP every month for the rest of her life. Combined with her own CPP, her income holds up. But if John delays to 70 and dies at 68 before he ever starts collecting, Mary gets nothing from his CPP, not a portion, not a percentage, nothing. There's a one-time death benefit of $2,500, and that's it. Mary is left with only her own CPP of $600 a month, plus OAS when she qualifies. That's a very thin income for the rest of her life. Let's put a number on what she loses. If John had started CPP at 65 and then died at 68, Mary would have received $904.59 a month for life. Over 20 years, which is not unusual for a woman in her mid-60s, that's over $216,000 in survivor income she never saw. And that's just the base case. If she lives longer, the gap widens. I've seen this happen. A client's father delayed his CPP because that was the advice he'd been given. He died at 69. His widow was left with only her own small pension. Within a few years, she had to sell the house. It was heartbreaking, and it was completely avoidable. The survivor benefit isn't a small detail. For couples, it can be the most important number in the entire CPP decision. And the standard delay to 70 advice, applied to the higher earning spouse, ignores it entirely. So for married couples, the math isn't just about lifetime income for two healthy people living into their mid-80s. It's about what happens if the plan breaks. What does Mary's income look like if John doesn't make it to 70? That scenario isn't morbid, it's realistic. And it has to be part of the calculation. The good news is that once you know about this risk, it's easy to factor in, which is exactly what the decision framework in the next section is built for. Even when people understand the math, many still freeze. And I think it's worth naming the two feelings that make this decision harder than it should be. The first is loss aversion. What if I start collecting at 65 and then live to 95? I'll have left a lot of money on the table by not waiting until 70. That fear is real, and it's completely understandable. Nobody wants to make a decision they'll regret for 30 years. The second is present bias. I'm healthy right now. I want to enjoy my retirement while I can actually do things. I don't want to wait. That's also completely valid. There's a version of life where taking the money earlier and spending it on experiences you can actually enjoy is the right call. I've had clients sit across from me who were genuinely torn, not because they didn't understand the numbers, but because both of these feelings were pulling at them at the same time. That's not weakness. That's a genuinely hard decision with real money on the line. But here's what I've noticed. When the decision gets framed as delay versus not delay, people get stuck in the emotion of it. When it gets reframed as which path protects my specific situation, the answer usually becomes clearer. I don't know your health history. I don't know how long your parents lived or what runs in your family. Only you can be honest about that. But what I can do is give you a framework that removes the guesswork and lets the numbers do the work. That's what the next section is for. When you stop asking, when should I take CP Prime, and start asking, what gives me the best income floor and the most flexibility for my actual situation, that's when the decision gets easier. Okay, so how do you actually figure out the right move for you? Here's a simple 3-step process. Step 1, get your actual CPP estimate. Log into your My Service Canada account and look up your projected benefit at 60, 65, and 70. These numbers are personalized to your contribution history. Don't guess. The difference between your estimate and someone else's could be hundreds of dollars a month. Step 2, add up your total savings honestly. That means your RRSP, your TFSA, any non-registered investments, and any workplace pension you have coming. You need a real number here, not a rough sense of it. Step 3, run it through this framework. If your savings are under $100,000 and you're single, starting CPP at 65 is most likely your best option. The silo break-even math doesn't work when your savings can't sustain a 5-year bridge. You'd be depleting your only cushion. If your savings are under $100,000 and you're married, starting CPP at 65 protects both of you. It preserves your savings and it locks in the survivor benefit. If something happens to the higher earning spouse before 70, your partner isn't left with nothing. If your savings are between $100,000 and $300,000 and you're single, delaying to 70 can make sense, but only if you're in reasonably good health and you have enough other income to cover the bridge years without draining your savings completely. If your savings are between $100,000 and $300,000 and you're married, a good middle ground approach is to start the higher earner at 65, which locks in the survivor benefit, and potentially delay the lower earner if they're in good health. This gives you protection plus some upside. If your savings are over $300,000, delaying to 70 typically makes mathematical sense. You have enough of a bridge to sustain the wait, but even then, you should factor in health and survivor risk before committing to it. Here's the one thing that overrides all of it. If you have a health condition or a family history of early death, the break-even age of 82 matters a lot. Someone who realistically expects to live to 75 is better off taking CPP earlier, almost regardless of their savings level. The math flips fast when longevity is uncertain. For most Canadians with average savings, starting at 65 is the sweet spot. It gives you a reliable income base, it protects your spouse, and it keeps some savings intact for the unexpected costs that will come up in retirement, because they always do. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. I put out a new retirement planning video every week, and this is exactly the kind of thing I cover. The numbers behind the decisions most Canadians are making on incomplete information. The biggest mistake most Canadians make with CPP isn't picking the wrong age. It's treating the decision as if one answer fits everyone. Your savings level and your marital status change everything. The same timing that works perfectly for someone with $400,000 in their RRSP can leave someone with $100,000 in a genuinely worse position. And the same delay strategy that maximizes a single person's lifetime income can gut a surviving spouse's financial security. The goal was never to get the biggest CPP check. The goal is to build the most stable and resilient retirement income for your actual situation and to protect the people who depend on you. If this video helped you see this decision differently, hit like and subscribe, and leave a comment below. What age are you planning to start CPP? I read every comment, and I'm always interested to hear where people land on this. Retirement planning is never about finding the perfect answer. It's about making a good decision with the information you actually have. You now have more of it.